Well, the United Kingdom has reported the highest number of infections and deaths in a single day. In the last 24 hours, the country has reported 4,324 positive cases and 563 deaths due to the deadly coronavirus pandemic. Now, the British authorities are expecting a surge in cases in the coming weeks, but they are also hoping to see the effects of the nationwide lockdown introduced 10 days ago to have an impact on the cases. Prime Minister Boris Johnson lamented over increasing number of deaths in Britain. Johnson, who himself has tested positive for the virus, took to Twitter to call it a sad day for Britain. He also told people that work was underway and assured that increased testing was being adopted to tackle the lethal COVID-19 disease.
On some of the things that we're doing, above all to protect our NHS, and we've shipped just in the last couple of weeks 397 million separate pieces of personal protective equipment to look after our amazing NHS staff, and the Army Reservists and others are doing a quite amazing job of shipping that stuff around the country. We're also massively increasing testing. And I want to say a special word about testing because it is so important. And as I've said for weeks and weeks, this is the way through. This is how we will unlock the coronavirus puzzle. This is how we will defeat it in the end.
Britain has been under lockdown for over 2 weeks now, and so far only 153,000 people have been tested. The government, under the leadership of Boris Johnson, aims to expand this number and test as many as 25,000 people a day by April. And the government of Britain is also collecting data after considering deaths that have occurred only during hospital admissions. Some experts also believe that the true death toll could be higher by 24% in the UK. Now, the 71-year-old Prince Charles, heir to the throne and son of Queen Elizabeth II, has recovered after testing positive for COVID-19 a few days ago. In a video message, the Prince praised the selfless devotion of healthcare workers and asked people to remain positive in this time of distress.
As we're all learning, this is a strange, frustrating and often distressing experience when the presence of family and friends is no longer possible and the normal structures of life are suddenly removed. At such an unprecedented and anxious time in all our lives, my wife and I are thinking particularly of all those who have lost their loved ones in such very difficult and abnormal circumstances, and of those having to endure sickness, isolation.
Meanwhile, a sense of panic and chaos has also hit the streets of London. A 55-year-old man, Adam Lewis, who has been sentenced now to 6 months of jail for spitting on a policeman while he said that he had tested positive for the virus. The convicted man also smashed a bottle of wine on the officer's head for having stopped him from touching doorknobs. The number of deaths due to coronavirus has increased significantly, 31%, and currently around 26,000 patients are under active treatment as the virus has gone on to infect more than 29,000 people and has killed over 2,300 in Britain alone. WION's bureau chief in London, Mandy Clark, sent us this report.
Britain is halfway through its second week of lockdown, and there is a rising sense of frustration, certainly in the newspapers, about the lack of testing equipment for the NHS frontline staff. Many newspapers are screaming that there's over 500,000 health workers, but only 2,000 have been tested. Others point out that they're essentially like frontline soldiers that we've put out to war, but not giving them the body equipment they need to protect themselves. Now, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson have confronted these accusations of lack of testing and their slow approach, saying they're doing everything possible to get this to the frontline staff, that it is essential puzzle piece to fighting the coronavirus. But Also, we're seeing on the economic front, there have been reports that around a third of British small to medium businesses will likely go bust in the next 4 weeks because they simply can't get the loans that the government had promised to keep them afloat. So certainly there's a sense of frustration as the coronavirus continues to take hold here in Britain. Mandy Clark, World is One, WION, London.